Great. Alexis, we're ready for you. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexis James. I'm managing partner at WorkWise Law, and I am the chair of the Employment Law Section for the San Fernando Valley Bar and the treasurer this year. And I'm always looking for ways to expand our knowledge base. And I've worked with Brooke Loesby for years. She has helped us build our firm as a recruiter. She has brought wonderful people to our team, and I'm very grateful to her. But I heard Brooke speak at a different group on this topic of what separates the Gen Z from millennials in the workplace. And it's definitely something that our firm has encountered. There's, generational changes and differences of opinion on how the work gets done, what's important, the values of it. And so I thought that this would be a wonderful topic for our bar to listen to. I know that many of you have questions as you're building your teams on how to do this and create the best work environment. So that's what we're here to talk about. Brooke is the founder of Law Life Coach, Inc., and she was a former attorney and career coach. She's both a recruiter and a career coach. Her passion is improving the lives of attorneys and making law firms healthy, sustainable places to work. She helps attorneys and law firms define their version of success and achieve their goals. Brooke uses a strengths-based, mindfulness-driven approach to help lawyers align their practice with their values and thrive in their careers and personal lives. And so, like I said, I can speak from personal experience. She is a true expert in this area. And Brooke, we're happy to have you. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Alexis, for the warm welcome. It's nice to see everyone here. We're going to be using the chat pretty actively, so I want everybody to go ahead and open that up. I'd like you to type in before we get started here, which generation do you identify with? Are you a boomer? Are you Gen X? Are you Zillennial? Are you a millennial? And do we have any Gen Zs in the room? So go ahead and pop that open. All right, great. Seeing some activity in there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I know that as a firm, you've already probably felt like I've done a lot of adapting for millennials. Now Gen Z is entering the picture, and Gen Z is about up to age 29. So your younger associates, probably some staff members. These are all folks that you're encountering, and you're like, wait, they're like millennials, but they're not. And so we're going to be talking today about how Gen Z is really changing the picture. You've done a really great job of adapting for millennials. Most firms now have, parental leave policies in places. You've thought about mentoring programs. Those were really important. And wellness initiatives. Millennials brought that conversation to the stage in terms of just even talking about it and having that be an okay thing to discuss in the workplace. Um, Now, Gen Z is not just more of the same. They are entering law at a time of historic living expenses. They have astounding debt from law school. Mental health is a huge issue for them, and they're having rapid tech change. So they want some of the same things that millennials wanted, but they're coming at it from a different posture. They already assume that flexibility and mental health are part of the package. They're not perks, these are table stakes. And technology is something that a firm should be investing in, otherwise, it's a waste of their time. So, when we're starting to think about this thing, my urge for you is to look at this not as resistance, but to look at it as opportunity. How can we lean in? How can we make our firms better from these opportunities that Gen Z is presenting? How can we take this as an opportunity for us to change our own mental health and practices? And I really encourage you to think about the long run of thinking about how can we incorporate this and make our firms better rather than just resist and begrudge and be upset about this new generation. I really think this is a roadmap of opportunity rather than a problem. So let's get started with why is Gen Z the way they are?
And many
Oh, Sorry. So first off, starting with two generations, two economies. So the millennials started the work during the 2008 crash, right? There was this great recession. Firms were cutting their class sizes. Um, there were shrinking bonuses. The message at that time was be grateful you have a job. That created a generation of lawyers who internalized that security as fragile. So they started to work harder to prove their worth to the institution. That was their mindset is if I can work hard, I'll succeed. Gen Z watched the fallout from that. And in fact, they grew up and came of age at a time when the pandemic, mass resignations, and waves of layoffs in white collar jobs, including legal and tech. So their formative story is one more of the system doesn't always take care of us. Um, we're not always going to be taken care of if we give loyalty to our company. So, Deloitte did a study that you might find interesting. They found that Gen Z and millennials are less interested in titles and much more interested in cost of living, in job security, and burnout. Those are their top concerns. So millennials believe that working hard could buy their security. And that's probably something a lot of us also grew up thinking is like, if we're loyal to the companies will be loyal to us. And that was part of our personal mindset. But Gen Z, that equation fell flat. They saw millennials not be rewarded for their loyalty and hard work, and they saw their parents be, let go from companies through no fault of their own just maybe to increase the shareholder proportions. So let's take a look at what Simon Sinek has to say about it.
And many of the inherent deals that were made between a company and its employer, a company and the customer used to be, that we will work tirelessly in our competitive spirit to make a better product for you. And we will work tirelessly to look after our people so that our people give back years of loyalty. And unfortunately, this young generation has grown up in a world where mass layoffs are so normalized, where they've watched their parents or their friends' parents be laid off through no fault of their own. It was not a meritocracy. Just because the company missed, like I said, an arbitrary projection. It's profitable, just not as profitable as we expected. So you get to lose your job as a result. So I can go back and prove to somebody that I balanced the books, even though I'm doing long-term damage to the culture of the company. And that deal was broken. That deal was broken that I'm going to take care of you and you're going to take care of me.
So there's almost this mentality that work is a scam. There is a work is a scam mindset because Gen Z's grown up with this constant cautionary tale about work. Does work have my back or not? They're not going to automatically trust that loyalty that many of us believed was just part of the institution.
After coming in today and meeting my Gen Z new hire said, ugh, sorry, I can't make it. I have a workout class.
My visceral reaction was, are you fucking kidding me?
No, fully. First of all, baby, your opinions are aging you about 20 years, but no, Gen Z does not care. We were hired for an annual salary rate that doesn't even cover all our bills and are contracted from 9 to 5. So we will be in that office bright and early at 9 a.m. every day, and we will be clocking out at 5 p.m. on the dot. No more, no less. And I don't know, a lot of you with a boomer mindset will come in and be like, Gen Z doesn't want to work. They're lazy. They have no job loyalty. Yeah, are you kidding me? In this economy, we are not getting paid enough to have a strong work ethic, let alone working for hours we didn't sign up for when most of us already work multiple jobs. But yes, hustle culture is over because there is nothing left to hustle for. Gen Z has watched millennials go through this struggle and we have learned from them. We listened to them and learned that y'all are just trying to sell us a pipe dream. There is nothing to hustle for.
Harsh realities there from Gen Z. I went ahead and pulled some clips from TikTok because that's where they talk, and this is how they talk. And we need to be listening to what they're saying about their workplace because let me tell you, they will talk about it. So let's get the information from them. We have seen that they now have grown up in an environment where corporations aren't necessarily loyal. Law firms aren't necessarily loyal to them. And if anything, maybe they feel like in the past, millennials have been taken advantage of for their hard work and dedication that they haven't gotten very much value out of. So there's this cautionary tale that they're approaching work with. And, they've watched millennials chase these dreams and still not be able to afford homes, still be stuck paycheck to paycheck, even as attorneys. And so you layer in like these TikToks mocking the 9 to 5 life and people sharing stories of corporate hypocrisy behind the scenes on platforms like TikTok, and you can start to see, there's this anti-work almost mindset. They don't reject effort, they just reject the futility of this system where working hard isn't necessarily going to get them anywhere. So let's talk just a little bit about the influencer economy and kind of how they see their peers and others gaining success. So us older generations, we probably grew up where our models were judges, the C-suite, partners in law firms. Those were the people we admired. Gen Z is growing up and they're watching creators, coders, founders build wealth and flexibility outside these traditional institutions. We're seeing 20 somethings like Mr. Beast monetize content, and we're seeing them build these SaaS tools. We're seeing them run like niche businesses from their own laptops. So they're seeing the wealth happen independently of the institution. And that old pitch that we used to hear, which is come work here for, 5, 10, 15 years, and you might make partner, that's now being challenged. And we're now competing with build your own thing, keep control of your time, and see your own success. So Gen Z is much less likely than previous generations to, name that classic leadership role, whether it's partnership, whether it's the C-suite, whether it's general counsel, as their primary career goal. And they're much more likely to prioritize autonomy and meaningful work. Go ahead and share in the chat, share yes, if you have read the book Drive by Daniel Pink. Drive talks about 3 motivators. It was really ahead of its time. I think it came out like maybe in around like the ones, so like maybe in the 2010s, but it was really ahead of its time. It talks about 3 primary drivers for employees. And those are mastery. That means the chance to master something every single day that you feel like you are good at. Autonomy. That means, having the flexibility to create your own schedule and create success. Not necessarily being told exactly how to do something, but figuring out how to do so yourself. And then purpose. Feeling like your work is meaningful on a day-to-day basis. Those are the 3 things that Daniel Pink recognized, and those are really coming out here in the Gen Z philosophy. So you'll see that with the influencer economy, especially around that autonomy and the meaning. They want to build something for themselves. They have an independence mindset, and they don't hate structure. They just want to see, how does it benefit me? What's the freedom inside of it for me? So this is the inherited trauma. Millennials grew up, if I work hard, I'll earn trust and I'll continue to get promoted, right? I'll put my head down, I'll take on that heavy mental load, I'll learn partner speak, I'll learn corporate speak, and hopefully that loyalty will be reciprocated. And these are the folks that lived through those layoffs, those stalled promotions, and that culture that talked about wellness, but still rewarded overwork. Gen Z watched that story play out. They saw people prove themselves and then still get cut by corporations, still get laid off by law firms, and still get burnt out, right? So their logic is really actually pretty simple. Gen Z is saying, if you want my best work, show me you have integrity first. Show me you deserve my loyalty. Show me that if I work for you, that I won't get burnt out. I will then invest in you. But this is a reversal in their mindset, right? They're skeptical. They've had trauma around this. Let's talk about the clear exchange of value. This can sound cold to leaders who grew up with an identity bond to their firm, but it's actually very straightforward. They will work hard, but they want clarity on what they're being asked to give and what they expect in return. So this includes money, but it also includes realistic expectations around hours, mentoring, feedback, learning opportunities, growth. A survey of young lawyers showed many were willing to trade comp for more flexibility or for reduced billing hours, which is actually, if you think about it, pretty rational exchange of optimization. So they're thoughtful about this and they're practical about this. They're not saying, I'll do the bare minimum. They're saying, I don't want to quietly donate unpaid emotional investment or unpaid time to a system that I don't know is going to reward me back. So that devotion without reciprocity feels unsafe to them. They want it proven first. Let's talk about another aspect of millennials. I want you to enter in the chat like a thumbs up if your Gen Z has talked to you in a way that you're shocked by the informality. If you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they just talked to me like that. That was so direct. That wasn't like proper corporate formality." Enter a thumbs up if you've experienced that in the workplace. Because this is one of the friction points that most of you have probably felt. Millennials were still taught to kind of read the room, to soften their tone and to be careful about how they spoke to, their elders, to people above them. Many millennials would still vent, in private while staying polished in the workplace. But Gen Z is collapsing that gap. They speak to partners the same way that they speak to their 20-something coworkers. And they will influence and they'll talk about their work-life boundaries, fair pay, about work as their identity. And let me tell you, if a Gen Z is questioning the norm, everybody else is paying attention and watching because they will talk about it. So we can either find that threatening or we can create a transparent, open culture where that communication is accepted and in sync. Let's hear from them.
Go on apps like this and we see millennials, elder millennials, Gen X talk about all the things that they've gone through in the corporate careers, of how corporations are taking advantage of us, the world of capitalism, about how there's toxic companies, what to watch out for. I think because of that level of awareness, that has taught us to speak up. Speak your mind, advocate for yourself, because no one's going to do it for you. But the Gen Z mindset of the best way to make a company better, to make the world better, is by asking questions, is by sometimes going against your boss. That usually doesn't translate very well professionally to millennials, Gen X, boomers. I almost feel like a lot of them take this form of communication almost as a personal attack because they're just not used to seeing this level of like abrasiveness in a professional workspace. And honestly, my generation, we just don't take work as seriously as former generations. And that is not me saying that we don't work hard, we don't get our shit done. I'm saying that we grew up knowing that a lot of us will never be able to own a home. And a lot of us will never be able to afford children. And a lot of us have millennial role models that we have watched essentially work in the capitalist cycle and be a corporate slave, and they still can't afford a home right now. So for a lot of us, we're just sitting here going, what's the point? What is the point of doing all of this work if we can't have a life?
If we can't have a life outside of work. Hard reality. Let's look at the economics of it. So historically, the US, like in the US, we could buy a home for about 3 times our paycheck. That was like, in the 60s all the way through the 90s, that was about the average. It was doable. But by 2019, the ratio changed to about 4.1. And now we are looking at, especially in areas like LA, New York, 7 to 8 times the income to buy a home. So it's not just that it's harder, it's almost economically undoable. And uh, on top of that, we add on, a 6-figure debt maybe from going to law school or from their undergrad, and they are just feeling buried. They don't see a way out. They don't see a happy ending in a white picket fence. It just feels to them like very daunting. So when we look at them and we say, hey, like I bought my house in my 20s or my 30s, we are ignoring the whole entire economic landscape. This is why just work hard doesn't pencil out to them and it doesn't land. They're actually pretty literate in the math and they're figuring out the landscape of the current reality. Let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about the mental health aspect. So, right now, about 3 out of 4 lawyers report regular anxiety on the job. And about a third of attorneys are depressed clinically in some way, shape, or form. And both of these are up from prior years. And I know none of this is rocket science to any of you. We all grew up knowing that this profession was high in both, but we walked into it just thinking that this was the realistic situation. And Gen Z is different. They're looking at this as, gosh, I don't want to normalize this. This isn't healthy. And they're saying it out loud. They're talking about it in interviews. They're saying it on social media. And they're setting their boundaries early, not because they're trying to be difficult, but because they're trying to be sustainable. And they don't want to have a breakdown. They see mental health as a requirement and as sustainability as something that they absolutely demand in the workplace. Um, so they don't want burnout. They've seen that happen with their peers, and they want their values recognized in the workplace. So, one thing that I find really important for law firms is to also think about what we're modeling. Are we modeling healthy boundaries? Are we modeling a sustainable practice? Because that's something they're looking at in assessing whether this is a workplace that is something they want to invest in, or is this just a temporary job for them? I think this is one of their probably strongest gifts to our profession is starting to take boundaries seriously. Millennials walked in with things like parental leave and thinking about work-life balance, but the boundaries have really been upped by Gen Z. So I think this is a real gift. So in all of this friction, there's actually a lot of strength that we can learn from Gen Z. Um, they're blunt, and that bluntness signals to us what's not working. They insist on boundaries, and that pushes firms to design something that is sustainable. They are digital natives and they expect up-to-date tools, including legal research tech and AI. Reports on Gen Z say that if they don't see modernized tech within an institution, they see it as a sign that the firm is not serious about efficiency and about quality of life. They also care about meaning and impact. We talked about that earlier with purpose. And 3/4 of Gen Z say they care about what they do in the world. Now, does this mean that your firm has to have some altruistic purpose? Not necessarily, but you have to show the why. Why does their work matter? Help them see transparently within your law firm how it is benefiting them, the law firm, how it benefits the clients. Like, if you really spell that out, they'll find innate purpose in their position and they will work better and harder because they see the larger value. Also, if you align your company with, some type of, maybe it's group bonding, like over giving back to the community, or maybe it's pro bono work, or you're focused on DEI, you'll get really deeply engaged lawyers who are proud of their workplace and proud of their institution, and you're going to get good publicity from them for that. Um, Lastly, why this matters to law firms. Firms sometimes think, gosh, we just need Gen Z so that we can grow, staff the deal, work the case. But the reality is much bigger. They are, up to 29 now. They're starting to go in-house. They're starting to become the founders that you hire. They are actually going to be your clients. And so we don't want to see just their partnership as an end game. We want to be thinking, how do we gain their respect as, be people that will be literally hired by this generation? So this is long-term business development strategy for you. Your employment brand and your client brand are the same brand because everybody sees this transparently. Everybody's looking on Glassdoor. Everybody sees what's on TikTok. Everybody sees what's on LinkedIn. We want this all to be transparent and we want it all to be attractive to Gen Z. So that's the end of part one. Now we're going to shift a little bit into part two. So, how can we, as a law firm, adapt? The new leadership challenge. So, again, we talked a little bit about how there's not that inherent respect for hierarchy that existed previously. Leadership now is earned. It's not assumed. They don't follow titles. They don't care about, how long you've been in your company. They follow people who they respect and who have sustainable careers and who they want to emulate. Gen Z ranks transparency, fairness, and mental health near the top of what they want for employers. Let me say that one more time. Transparency, that means communication. Fairness, and mental health. Those are their top requirements. They're really quick to sense when the messaging doesn't match the reality. If we're saying one thing in our ad or talking about one thing in our interview and then representing a different culture, they're going to see through that very quickly. So we want to make sure that we are adapting this into our culture. And speaking of culture, millennials brought on what I'd call a strong mentoring requirement, an interest in mentoring. Gen Z is asking for coaching. I want you to go ahead and write in and coaching is really what they're asking for with mentorship. So I'd like you to in the group chat, go ahead and write mentor if you've heard that you wanted mentoring from anybody in the Gen Z area. Go ahead and write mentor. They expect a feedback-rich environment. They want to know how they're doing. They want to know where they stand. They want to know how to grow. And they want feedback that feels like a joint problem-solving process rather than just a one-way verdict. Now, this doesn't mean you have to lower your standards. It just has to mean that we have to change how we deliver our information. It's not, this is what you did wrong and this is how to fix it. It's like, here's what we need you to do next time, and here's how I suggest you approach it. We want to create a safe culture where they can ask questions and feel like they can reflect and talk again transparently. That's their safe place. That's how they're going to feel like this is, again, an environment that they can feel loyal to. If the pattern feels more like just do it my way or it's sink or swim, this is not going to be an environment that's going to be beneficial for this generation. So the question is like, do we want to just complain about it or do we want to invest in this culture and reap the benefits? There's a book I recommend you all get. It's called The Coaching Habit. It's by Michael Stanier. And he talks about how to take everyday conversations and turn it into a coaching moment. Gen Z will respond very well to these types of questions. What's on your mind? Gets them to open up. And what else? Develops trust by opening up even more. What's the real challenge here? Gets them thinking for themselves about the next step. What do you want? That shows that you care and invest in their lives. How can I help? That's positioning yourself as that mentor. If you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? This is helping them define their boundaries. What was most useful or valuable to you? This is, again, helping them reflect on purpose. So I recommend taking this book, but it's essentially just incorporating these questions into your day-to-day. So now we're redefining loyalty. We are showing that old model of prove yourself into the new model of show me I belong and I'll prove myself to you. We don't have to love this idea, but we have to understand it to be able to create a safe space again for them. So you're showing your trust by being clear about your expectations, by not moving the goalpost, by not saying your workplace is one thing and doing another. You're showing respect by not punishing people for using the benefits you advertise. So for example, if you say you can have days off and they take them, we want to reward that with like, yes, you're using them for a good purpose. And we also want to listen to them about concerns around workload and culture because they are transparent. They are communicative. They will bring it to us. When firms do this and engage in that dialogue, you're going to see a higher engagement and lower attrition. And when you don't, you're going to see something called quiet quitting. Tell me about, go ahead and write quiet quitting in the chat if you've experienced an employee who's doing that bare minimum, who is not willing to rise above like the minimum expectations so that they don't get fired. Write quiet quitting in the chat. You'll also see fast exits. And in some cases, you'll see them talking about your brand in a way that is not going to be very complimentary. So this is the loyalty risk. So flexibility is now what we want to think about as an infrastructure. It is not a perk to be flexible anymore. It's a productivity tool. This generation is saying, if you don't give me the flexibility to incorporate my doctor's appointments, to be able to flex, like, picking up my kid from school and incorporate this all into my life, you are not helping me be the most efficient human being, and you are actually not on my side. So they don't see this as a perk. They see it as a requirement for them to be productive and be able to give their best energy on the job. Gen Z, they just expect some type of remote work and in office as well as in office time. Now, I think there is some kind of flex there, but the in office time has to be valuable. There has to be a reason you're in office. It's not just because you're sitting there counting the clock. That's going to again lead to disrespect, to a lack of loyalty. There has to be a purpose for you being in the office together. They don't want to be working crazy nights and weekends unexpectedly. They are willing to pitch in when it makes sense. Again, like let's say you've got a big case coming up, you're preparing for trial, you're preparing for that deposition, that makes sense to them. But if we're in there just for office time or to prove to the partner, like many of us, like, oh, we're just sitting in our seats, we're typing away, that is not something that they understand or that they respect anymore. And many are willing to pay. They're willing to pay like their own salary for this trade-off. We talked about this a little bit earlier. And what I mean by that is they're willing to work less for a less salary. Because again, like that title is less important to them than the boundaries, than the work-life balance, than being able to be sustainable. Those are the things that are really important to them. So that flexibility is going to be a big trade-off for them. It's all about what's going to get their highest performance. Purpose beyond billables. Gen Z wants to know why their work matters, and they want to know what's in it for me. Alexis and I were talking just before we all came on, and she's in a group where they were complaining that they're not making their billables. And when pressed about this, they said, why should I? What's in it for me? And I think there's two things that are happening here. First of all, there's a mismatch between what you can get away with culture and what the stated expectation is. It's really important that those match. So if they're looking at millennials who have underperformed in their billables by 100, 200 hours in the workplace, and that's part of the culture, and they're not getting fired, they're seeing that as the unspoken norm. The culture needs to align with the expectations. So change the billable to what's actually happening and then give some type of a reward or incentive for busting above that billable. But you have to make sure it's actually matching and that there's repercussions or some kind of consequences if it's not, because otherwise they're not going to respect it. They're going to see right through that. And the other part of them maybe not making those billables is the what's in it for me part. They want to know why it matters. Are they just a number? Are they just grinding for this you know, um, billable target that's benefiting the firm and not benefiting them? Why does it matter? You've got to connect it to the client mission. You've got to connect it to justice. You've got to connect it to the purpose of their position, and you've got to connect it to their own impact. That's what they will respect. They don't respect writing memos for rich companies. They are going to respect, I solve complex problems that make a difference in the world. Gen Z, like we talk about, they expect these tools to be at least as good as the tools on their phone. Otherwise, we are archaic, we are behind the times. And again, we're losing that respect for them. And we're also, they see us as being unproductive. So it's really important that we be up to date. And what better way than to lean in on them? Let them be the test bunnies. Let them figure out what works well and then teach the team. They want the tech that reduces the busy work, and they want the tech that is going to help the firm. They don't want the tech that just tracks busy work. Let me repeat that again. They don't want the tech that just tracks busy work. If you're just employing tech that makes sure that they're on the computer, that's not respect for their time. That's not respect for their efficiency. So invite them into your innovation efforts. Help them figure out where the frictions are, help them figure out where to innovate. They will help your firm get to the next level. Normalize mental health. So as we talked earlier, this is already, as we know, a problem for lawyers. Gen Z's just done silent suffering. They are expecting mental health to be discussed openly in the workplace. They're expecting this to be something that is a requirement for law firms. They want realistic workloads. They want access to mental health days, to being able to talk about like a part-time day if they need that for something going on in their lives. So for leaders, this isn't about becoming therapists. It's about energy management. It's about how do I get the most out of these employees? And you're not going to get the most out of them, on 2 hours of sleep or on requiring them to be in the office when it's not effective. So we want to be thinking about like chronic overload and how to gain the most out of their productivity. We talked earlier about how Gen Z is used to having information. They are a transparent culture. They can look up salaries on Glassdoor. They can find out information about your firm online through, a series of information like very quickly in minutes. And so if you are withholding information internally that affects them, things like salaries, bonuses, the why behind like that gray area that we all kind of expected previously that leaders, oh, like that's leadership. No, they do not respect that at all. So we've got to fill in the gaps of being super transparent about why things operate the way that they are. And again, that's what's going to build their respect. So moves that are good are bottom up information, like pull your Gen Z about what's working, what's not working for them. And we don't have to like implement everything that they say, but we have to show them that their input matters. We have to build a transparency. That transparency of communication is what's going to build their trust. So, showing that we have good boundaries, that we are fair in the workplace, things around like how to get ahead, salaries, bonuses, mentorship, all of those are things that they want flattened.
Hey, can we talk about that report you sent over? There were a few things missing. Oh, yeah, I noticed that too. My bad, I'll fix it later today. Sound familiar? If you're the boss in this situation, it might feel a little too casual. But hold up, before assuming it's disrespect, let's break down why Gen Z communicates this way, and honestly, why it makes sense. One, they don't believe in hierarchy. For Gen Z, your title doesn't mean they'll change how they talk to you. It's not personal, it's just how they see the world. And why shouldn't they? This is a generation that has grown up watching outdated hierarchies fail. So they talk to you more peer-to-peer instead. They value efficiency over formality. For Gen Z, formality feels like a waste of time. They'd rather get straight to the point and move on. And again, why shouldn't they? They've grown up in the era of fast, direct communication, Snapchat, Slack, text, memes. They are not going to write a full paragraph long polite email to simply say, I'll fix it. They're all about authenticity. Gen Z doesn't do the whole work persona thing where you put on a mask. And why should they? They've been told to prioritize mental health and authenticity, and they've seen the burnout from faking it. They're choosing honesty over pretense. So if their style throws you off, remember, it's not about disrespect. Gen Z just communicates differently, and that's okay. Agree, disagree, Drop your thoughts in the comments.
All right. So, another thing that's really important around that transparency is to practice what we preach. If we are saying we're a family and we have each other's backs, it's so important that that's actually part of your culture. So be really careful about how you're presenting yourselves in interviews, in job descriptions, and make sure that that's actually practiced, because anytime there's not a match, Gen Z is going to spot that very quickly. Again, that's part of their trauma is does this company have my back? Does my boss have my back? Is it safe to be loyal to my employer? So practicing what you preach is what's going to build that trust. Prove yourself problem. I have one firm that I work with that we are slowly getting over this issue, but I'll share with you why it's so difficult for me to recruit for him. He's a fantastic firm. He really invests in his attorneys, and I've seen so many attorneys work really well there. But he's had difficulty in the last several years with recruiting. And the reason is he has an old school mentality around prove yourself, come in at a lower rate, come in at a lower salary than you could find elsewhere, prove yourself, and you'll get quickly promoted, you'll get quickly bonused, you'll get quickly raised. And the problem is with this generation, they don't believe it. That's all just a bunch of horse poopy. As much as he does practice what he preaches, and as much as, that is a reality at his firm, the 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 trust, the inherent loyalty just isn't there anymore. And so it makes recruiting very difficult. So again, like they have this expectation of I will do what you pay me for. And if that pay is already low with an expectation that they're going to outperform, they are not going to trust it. So there's a lack of trust immediately off of the bat. How to reframe your offer. So it's really important that you show from day one that you're investing in your attorneys. Again, that mentorship, that coaching mentality is what's going to make them feel safe. So framing the offer around like how they're going to be able to grow, how they're going to be able to contribute and learn quickly. And then in return, what your expectations are. As I invest in you, I'm also taking a risk that you are going to perform well and be able to add value. Sharing, again, that transparent exchange is what's going to make them understand the workplace better and be able to, again, trust and be loyal. So being just really forthright about this is what I'm giving you and this is what you are getting out of the situation, is going to allow them that safety. So some practical steps to be thinking about. Recruit with transparency about your, hours, your flexibility, your evaluation, your criteria, your pay bands. All these things should be extremely transparent and actually practiced. It's really important that you onboard in a way that will allow them to succeed in the firm. Throwing them in and hoping that they swim just doesn't work anymore. They will quiet quit. They will just be there, retain a paycheck, and then look for something new. Manage through frequent specific feedback. A two-way conversation is really important. I recommend a weekly check-in with your Gen Z attorneys and or having their staff have a supervisor check in weekly. That's going to build that transparency of trust. They shouldn't receive any new information in a review at the end of the year. This should be information that they're constantly being fed back, like throughout the year, where then the year-end review is much more around long-term goals, around how they have, produced this last year, around where they can improve, big picture. Those smaller things should really be tackled weekly. And then listen to them, listen to what your attorneys are saying, especially in exit interviews, do engagement surveys, have these one-on-one conversations and listen to them, because those are your opportunities to make these micro changes where they feel like their input matters. So lastly, millennials have softened the system. Gen Z is redesigning the system completely. And we're not burning down law firms, but this is a real opportunity for our profession to become better, to become more sustainable, and to lean in and adapt. Because if we don't, our competitors will, and they're the ones that are going to be working with Gen Z. So that closes out my presentation. Would love to open it up for questions.
I think people can put it in the chat box or perhaps unmute yourself since we are still recording. So as long as you don't mind, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question or go right to the chat box.
Brooke, I'll kick off a question. How do you coach your Gen X and Boomer attorneys to not have resentment when the Gen Z and Millennials are asking, but not willing to prove to earn the next ask? You know, you're saying that they want it up front and that they want you to trust them and then they'll prove themselves to you. For us that have had to do the hard work to build up the trust, who have the respect for the hierarchy, how do you not have, disrespect between the two generations?
As much as I hate to say it, I think it's a personal problem for us. I think we have to get over the fact that we did that work, and now the reality is that that is not respected anymore. The reality is that they are looking at an even playing field, and if we want to interact with this generation, we have to think differently about how we're showing up. So I think about, for example, like in my personal life, if my partner comes to me and is asking me for a change or something that's bothering them, instead of having that immediate resistance of that's not how we do things here, like, even if it's something small, like how we load up the dishwasher, right? Like, that's not how I do things here. Like, this is the proper way to do it. Like, we could respond with that resistance, or we could respond with curiosity around, like, why do you want to load the dishwasher that way? What's the benefit of it? And even just showing that curiosity and that interest is going to change the dynamic from being of one where, we are hierarchically better than them just based on our position, which again, they just don't respect. So if we stay in that locked mindset, we're not going to evolve with the times, and we're not going to have a workplace that they're going to respect or want to be at.
Anyone else have a question?
I have a question because I'm curious. It's such a sea change. I mean, is there such a overflow, perhaps, of job opportunities that this generation feels like it's out there for the picking, and so that they can just walk in and have a certain set of demands, and if they aren't met, they just can go elsewhere and then easily be employed elsewhere? Because it just seems like some of this is truly catering to this generation instead of perhaps telling them, this is the culture, this is how you work your way up. And that seems to have just not even entered the picture anymore.
Yeah, good question, Linda. So they don't look at work as their identity because again, they have seen work be disloyal to them, right? So they are, first of all, aren't looking to climb the ladder. Like that's not necessarily their end goal. Their end goal is survival. They are looking at this as how do I pay my student loans? How do I get my next paycheck so that I can like enjoy some time with my friends and have my caramel mocha latte, right? It's very like much more of a survival instinct for them because they don't see any long-term payoff. They don't see the ability to have that white picket fence, to be able to have enough money to buy a house, to have children, to be able to like live that lifestyle that we all have been able to live. So again, like their mindset is very much more skeptical. And you're saying like, you're right. Like they are since COVID, the mostly the economy has been booming to a point where there is a need for these Gen Z employees. They haven't faced a recession yet. That's a reality. They haven't faced a situation where they don't, there's some kind of unsteadiness. But at the same time, like looking at that generation, a lot of them are still like supplemented or supported by their parents. And it makes me wonder if even if there is that type of an environment, if they feel like there is either a safety net or things are so like impossible anyway, why try? So it'll be interesting to see if they face some type of a scarcity, if their mindset shifts or changes. But for right now, aside from tech, which has experienced some of those layoffs, but I think also just increases that mentality of like the workplace is a scam in general. I think most of them are they're not looking to have a job to like build and make money. They're looking again for impact. They want to make a difference. They want a sustainable career where they can have a life outside of the office. And they want like the freedom to be able to practice what they want to practice where they want to practice it. And I think a lot of them will look to self-employment. They'll look again to fast careers through tech or AI if things start going sideways in the economy.
I also want to ask, and how much has AI changed things in terms of, say, research attorneys that feel fine employing AI, where in the past you would have to do a lot of the legwork on your own, and how are firms viewing that as being acceptable practices?
Yeah, so I think from a Gen Z perspective, they're saying if your firm's not already using it, you're behind the times. So I think it's a matter of us catching up to their already comfortability with technology, their comfort level with, interfacing with AI. I think this is a real opportunity for law firms to lean in because I think a shift is happening right now. And if law firms don't take advantage of this shift, they're going to be left behind. So leaning in with Gen Z around how to adopt AI in the workplace, AI is not going away. It's kind of like Google. Like when Google came on the scene, like, it's a whole new shift in how we work, and we can resist it, but we're just going to be left behind. So instead, let's lean in and think about how we can use it. And the people who can use these tools the best are Gen Z.
And my other question, have you noticed gender differences in terms of expectations between young female attorneys, male attorneys, or is it a kind of across the board, same kind of expectations and same perhaps unwillingness to prove themselves in the way that other generations previously have done?
Interesting question. I would say there was still like a little bit of the traditional mindset with millennials, like especially around like women like choosing to stay home, like when they had their first baby and things like that with millennials. I saw a little bit of that traditionalism. I actually see it flip-flop with Gen Z. I see the men being a lot more sensitive, a lot more aware of their emotional health, a lot more aware of wanting to build a sustainable career where they can be home for the family. So if anything, I think there's a real big leveling out.
And have you noticed in your coaching experience, are some managing partners not willing to go this route and feel like, no, they have to adapt to us and we'll wait until we find those candidates who are willing to do that and go without until then, or go with a skeletal crew because they really don't respect that kind of attitude,
A
perhaps?
100%. Like, I think that that's like, especially my generation, Gen X, like we're stubborn. We're really stubborn. And so I see that a lot. And the issues that they're facing are people problems. They are having staffing issues. They are having retention issues. They're having people quiet quit. So yeah, so like while they can continue to want to model the norm, and there's still people that I think you can find, they're fewer and farther between. I'll give you one statistic, and that is like 10% of employees currently want to work in office 5 days a week. And we've had that return to office mentality with law firms where a lot of them want you in the office every single day, just like we were traditionally before COVID. Gen Z went through COVID. They went through all of their education completely online. They know how to work from home. And so they see that as an archaic practice, returning back to work. And yeah, like while 1 in 10 workers want to work in the office 5 days a week, trying to capture that 10% into your office is a lot more of a challenge than trying to figure out something that works for the majority of the employment pool.
Great.
We had a question in the chat. Are Gen Z attorneys choosing to be unemployed or underemployed instead of conforming?
Ah, interesting question. So I work on a coaching perspective as well, and I see Some attorneys comfortable with quitting while they look for their next job, but I'd say the majority of them say, I will just do the absolute bare minimum while I look for another position or while I figure out the rest of my lifestyle so that I can have what I want, which is maybe, going out with their friends or having significant time with a significant other or balancing what's their real priorities while giving their minimum at work. So the thing is, you're just not going to get the best out of them. We want to motivate these Gen Z to really give their all. And again, that comes back to Daniel Pink's three parts, the autonomy, the mastery, and the purpose. If we really focus on what's going to motivate them, we're going to get the most out of them and engage them and bring them into the conversation around how do we make this workplace better. If they feel part of that conversation, they're going to invest back. But if they feel like they want to, if they're in an environment that doesn't respect them, that's disloyal, that is operating from archaic practices, no tech, 5 days in the office, butts in the seat, even if it doesn't matter, they are going to be quiet quitting.
Great. I think that's it for the questions. Alexis, anything else you might have?
No, I just want to thank you, Brooke, for your insight on this. There's lots of valuable tidbits for us to all mull over and think about how we want to adapt, especially as we're heading into 2026. I hope that you will reach out to Brooke if you need to build your team. She can be a wonderful recruiter for you. She'll give you that valuable insight as to your applicants and whether it's a good fit as well. So thank you, Brooke, for this presentation and wishing everybody happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year with a new topic.
Thank you all. MCLE will be going out later this afternoon. Thanks again. Excellent presentation.
Thank you, Brooke.